Gone Global. Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, more news to come later in this hour about Trump's latest statements on the situation in Syria. Boris Johnson weighing in again on the Russian poisoning scandal. But the story that's really fascinated me over the course of the last 2 days, and I think sometimes in life, we're fascinated with things we don't know that much about. And I'll be honest, I am not a high-techy, geeky kind of person, but I do know the massive importance of social media, the extent to which it's completely changed the world. I've said it before, I say it again, without social media, Brexit would never have happened, Trump would never have happened. And I see the high street closing down because we've changed the way that we shop and we've changed the way that we live. And, of course, Facebook has been one of the most important elements of that. And I think, to some extent, the Cambridge Analytica story and the revelation of the extent to which our data is available and accessible to a vast number of commercial companies, I think my view is it's come as a bit of a shock to a lot of people. Certainly a bit of a shock to me. Let's just listen to what Mark Zuckerberg had to say, his main apology to this congressional hearing in the US this week.
I started Facebook, I run it, and I'm responsible for what happens here. It's not enough to just give people control over their information. We need to make sure that the developers they share it with protect their information too. We didn't do enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well. And that goes for fake news, for foreign interference in elections and hate speech, as well as developers and data privacy. In the future, we're going to have tools that are going to be able to identify more types of bad content. And I think that there are moral and legal obligation questions that I think we'll have to wrestle with as a society about when we want to require companies to take action. I do think that we can do a better job of explaining how advertising works. There is a common misperception, as you say, that is just reported, often keeps on being reported, that for some reason we sell data. I can't be clearer on this topic. We don't sell data. That's not how advertising works.
So they don't sell the data, but they sell access to the data for the advertiser. So they don't give away your details directly to somebody else, because that would mean they would have lost the one really important piece of power that they've got, but they sell access to it. But I wonder, what else do they do? Do they track us? Can they listen to us when we're talking? What to help me with this? Because I said, I'm not an expert on this. And I guess probably most of you listening aren't really experts either. You just happen to find the mobile phone and social media have changed our lives. I'm going to ask Will Guyatt, LBC's technology correspondent, to try and steer us through it. Good evening, Will.
Good evening, Nigel. Consider me your grandson tonight. I'll talk you through the technology and how the technology works.
Do you know, Will, I'll be honest with you. I get into hotel rooms all over the world and have to ring reception because I can't turn the telly on. So, yeah. And as you say, youngsters, people stop you in the street and say, "Can we take a selfie?" You know, and if they're aged under 30, it's all done and dusted in the space of about 3 seconds. And if they're over 50, it's all, "Would you hang on a minute? Well, I've got a train to catch," you know. So, grandson Will, help us through this.
Yeah, you know what? The thing that's been the most interesting about this, Nigel, is I think the world is finally waking up to the fact that we've given most of our personal information to these companies like Facebook. And not just Facebook, we're talking about the data we give to people like supermarkets, like Tesco and everybody else. We've got to a stage in society where we're so used to the internet being free, and by free, I mean you still pay for your internet access, but you're not paying for any of the services on it. The companies like Facebook, for example, they make about $50 a year per person that uses the platform.
Wow!
So they made $40 billion last year. So it's incredibly valuable for a company like Facebook to be able to use our data and target adverts at us. And as you've already pointed out, and I'm glad I don't have to remind you that Lee spent a great deal of money with Facebook targeting advertising when Brexit helping tip the influence towards Brexit, but it happens in all sorts of areas and fields.
Will, yes. As indeed did the other side as well. Just to
Nigel,
even it up a little bit.
Balance, of course, is absolutely
Will, we're not going to fall out over Brexit, are we? Come on.
No, we're not. Not tonight, Nigel. No.
Okay, come on. Yeah. But the thing that's confusing me is if you sign up to certain apps, they can actually listen to what you're saying, can't they?
You're getting slightly paranoid there, I will say. So what you're currently understanding there is the most apps on both the Apple iPhone and the Google Android stores have a broad, overreaching sort of level of permissions. And for example, some will be able to see the calls you're making on your phones. Some of them will be able to read the texts too. So there is those levels of information that you have there. And then, Nigel, I don't know about yourself, if you've ever gone and bought you've got one of these Amazon Alexas at home, the new speakers that listen to what you're talking about in the home. So those are definitely listening to what you're doing. And Amazon themselves there was a patent that came out last night, and they're going to start listening. They want to start listening to your conversations in the home so they can offer you better targeted products through their services. So our personal information as a whole, as a country and as a society globally, is becoming increasingly useful to businesses and organisations. So Mark Zuckerberg, now full disclosure, Nigel, I used to be a Facebook employee a number of years ago, but Mark Zuckerberg wants to self-regulate. Silicon Valley and technology companies want to self-regulate. They don't want Congress, they don't want governments like ours asking them tricky questions about what they do and how they use our data. And whether or not this means there's going to be a change in policy and more of us leave Facebook or leave other services, or maybe we just start saying to Facebook, well, don't use my information to target adverts at me. Let me give you a £20 a month subscription, for example, because Facebook has a lot of good. It unites a lot of people around the world. It does a lot of good things, and some people would probably pay that £20 to keep that level of access and interest. But given that 45% of Americans now say Facebook is their main source of news, you can understand why the Senate are getting very concerned about its influence.
Now, it was said that during Zuckerberg's testimony, his personal wealth increased by $3 billion. Did you think he performed well?
I thought he performed better than I thought he would, is my opening gambit there. He's a guy who 10 years ago would have handled that incredibly differently, and he's been media trained to within an inch of his life. And Nigel, he's been taught, he was looking so intent there when these senators were talking at him. His attention didn't leave who was speaking to him. So he was obviously very clearly trained to show a little bit of respect to these older people who didn't really understand a great deal about Facebook. And he explained the same answers to questions probably 30 or 40 times and rarely lost his temper. Okay,
and finally, do you think state regulation is coming for Facebook and forms of social media?
I think state regulation of the entire internet is going to come at some stage, but the internet companies themselves are going to have a hell of a battle before we get there.
Yep. OK, Will Guy, LBC's technology correspondent, thank you very much for helping us through a bit of that. So tell me, folks, were you shocked to find out the extent to which you could be targeted by advertising, or do we just have to accept this is now a part of modern life and the world has changed? So tell me, has Mark Zuckerberg done enough to convince you should stay on Facebook? And if he has, call me on 0345 6060 973. Or if you're going to ditch Facebook as a result of it, then text to 84850. You can tweet whether you think perhaps other social media platforms need thinking about too, using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, and here's the funny bit, you can watch us live on Facebook, as an increasing number of people do, and you can comment there. And it's quite a fun way of doing it, because you can see all the other comments there too. The positives, the negatives, the in the middles. Goodness me, we couldn't survive without Facebook, could we? My view is, I think actually if you sign up for social media, you just have to actually understand that actually, really, the concept that it's free. There's no such thing as a free lunch, I was told many years ago, and I still absolutely believe that. My view is, firstly, that very few people will ditch Facebook as a result of what's been said. Secondly, the European Union will regulate, and I think they'll be the first global authority to put regulation in place. Whether it's the right regulation or the wrong regulation remains to be seen, but I do think, an industry of this size, and one that, frankly, isn't paying enough tax in the countries where they're active, I think regulation is coming. Let's go to Graham, a new caller from Heathrow. Good evening, Graham.
Good evening, Nigel.
So, did you think Zuckerberg came across well and convinced people like you that Facebook's a good thing?
Well, I think if anyone had seen the movie about Facebook, the social network, then they already knew that, he's a very weird person. So, but what kind of shocked me was that when you see him standing there, he's like 32 years old. He is responsible, and he said it himself. I own Facebook. I run it. I'm in charge.
Yep.
We've put our, trust, and he is deciding censorship to 2 billion people.
Yeah, I mean, that's the bit, Graham, that worries me. That's the bit that worries me, and I mentioned this.
From his comments, he doesn't understand what censorship is. I mean, obviously, on the one hand, he was being very careful not to say they did censorship. And so he actually said, we don't do censorship. But they do. They and then he went on to say, well, terrorism is bad, that should come off.
Yeah.
And hate speech,
yeah,
well, whatever that is, everyone's definition of that is totally different. Bad content. He said bad. What's bad content?
Well, everybody's picking up Trumpisms, aren't they? Sort of thing Trump would say, bad dudes or whatever. But Graham, what's interesting is, over the course of the last 2 months, I would say, there's been a big, marked political shift in Facebook, and definitely conservative voices, right-of-centre voices, have had a much harder time reaching audiences on Facebook than they used to. Donald Trump's Facebook connection is 45% lower than it was at the start of this year, and that's because there have been, changes to the algorithms. So actually, you're right. Zuckerberg is in the most enormously powerful position, isn't he?
And he's the weirdest person.
Is he? Are you being a bit... I mean, did you think him sitting on that booster seat so that he looks a bit taller, did you find that weird?
Well, no other person has this level of responsibility in the whole world. Why does he have it, and why is it not regulated?
So,
and when you consider Sheryl Sandberg, the number 2,
yep,
she was writing letters to Hillary Clinton saying, we're desperate to do everything we can to get you re-elected.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
Yes. Is it time for some regulation, Graham?
I'm not a pro-regulatory guy normally, but in this case, I think it's gone too far that this one 32-year-old kid can censor 2 billion people.
Graham, I'm with you. I'm not a regulatory person, and I'm most certainly not an EU person. But I think the EU will start something that I hope the global community gets to grips with. We're going to have some form of regulation. Thank you very much indeed for your call. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:15.
LBC at the weekend. Tom Swarbrick.
You're walking around London carrying a knife, and you would use it.
Yeah.
You are contributing to the problem by carrying a knife.
No,
you are part of the problem here because you are someone who walks around London carrying a knife, potentially putting yourself and others at a risk and breaking the law in doing so.
Leading Britain's conversation. Tom Swarbrick. Saturday and Sunday mornings from 7 on LBC.
Award-winning Howarth Homes presents another outstanding development, The Dairy, an exciting new collection of just 33 apartments moments from Hillingdon Underground Station and the A40. With completion mid-2020 and the potential to benefit from the surrounding area's future regeneration, there may never be a better time to buy. The Dairy launches off-plan on the 26th of April with prices from as little as $259,995. Discover more at howarthhomes.co.uk.
No, this is not the sound of a refreshing drink being enjoyed outdoors in the sun, but the sound of itchy eyes being relieved. Optrex Acti-Mist 2-in-1 spray helps relieve itchy and watery eyes. Now go and have that drink in the sun if you fancy. Optrex Acti-Mist, so you can open your eyes to spring.
I'll swap you a Brazilian striker for a German centre-back. Throw in a Spanish keeper, and you, sir, have a deal.
Result! Need a Panini World Cup sticker pack? Then get yourself down to the Co-op, where they're just 80p. Participating stores only, subject to availability.
A few years ago, I wanted to try something a bit different instead of just going to the gym. There was a local MMA gym with women's only fitness classes. I loved the feeling that I had during the training session and after, and I just knew from there, I think I'm going to take this up full time. I can't imagine not doing it now. What makes mixed martial arts so different to any other sport is that it's so unpredictable. Even as a fighter myself, you never know what's going to come next. Most weekends I like to stay up until 3 a.m. Because of the time difference, and I like to watch the UFC. They have real big names on practically every card every weekend, so it's impossible not to stay up and watch. I think it's my sport because it's just so exciting. It's just the wow factor in every fight that comes, you get blown away.
Yahoo Sport, Fan-fueled stories that matter.
What's the smart way to see the great outdoors? Hop on an Aer Lingus flight from London to the west of Ireland, and in 2 hours you could be starting your Wild Atlantic Way adventure with a stroll along the cliffs of the world-famous coastal route. Get ready to experience spectacular ocean views, fresh seafood and live traditional music pouring out of cosy pubs. Fares start from just $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. Smart explores the Wild Atlantic Way. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
When the beast from the east struck, snow fell, temperatures plummeted, and the country ground to a halt. But Swale Heating leapt into action. Over the week, we helped over 10,000 homes stay warm and safe. To find out more about our boiler installations and maintenance schemes, visit swaleheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Has Mark Zuckerberg impressed you this week? Do you think, actually, Facebook's fine, we've got to accept in the modern world that our data will be used and actually used by advertisers everywhere? Is that level of privacy sufficient, or are you going to ditch Facebook? And of course, I've got loads of you watching me live on Facebook right now and commenting. Alistair says, without Facebook, we can't watch you, Nigel. It's a force for good. Alan says, I think the internet should be regulated, especially wearing that tie, Nigel. Thanks, Alan. That's very sweet of you. Robert says, one thing was clear. The senators didn't have a clue what Facebook was. I think they just didn't like the idea of a young person inventing a platform that had made him so much money when they hadn't thought of a similar thing. Stuart says, don't post what you don't want others to see. Simples. Well, there's a lot of truth in that, Stuart. And, of course, a lot of young people posting all sorts of craziness on Facebook, showing off to their mates and all the rest of it, of course not actually realising that if this stuff has been saved in any way, it's there and can be used against them forever. And that, you know, that is a real problem. Before Facebook, just very, very quickly, we've talked over the last few weeks about the OPCW, the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, who were called into Porton Down to issue their own report. Well, that report finally came today, and they've said they confirmed the findings of the United Kingdom relating to the identity of the toxic chemical that was used in Salisbury, meaning that, yes, it is Novichok, but like the UK government, they cannot say where it was made. They certainly can't say that it was made in Russia. Not that any of this ever stops Boris Johnson, who said today there can be no doubt what was used and there remains no alternative explanation about who was responsible. Only Russia has the means, motive and record. So Boris not backing down one little bit, but report after report, and it's all really very inconclusive. I begin to think we'll actually never know who really was responsible for what happened in Salisbury. But back to Facebook, back to whether you're happy with Zuckerberg's performance, back to whether you think, as I do, that regulation of some kind on a global level is inevitable. And are any of you actually going to ditch Facebook? I doubt there are many that will. Let's go to Steve, a new caller from Derby. Good evening, Steve.
Hi, Nigel. Thanks for taking my call.
Not one bit. So how did you feel about Zuckerberg's performance?
Very slick. Very, very slick. He's obviously rehearsed that. But what amazes me more than anything is the sheer bemusement by the politicians on both sides of the Atlantic how this could possibly happen. How could they manipulate this data and get out there? Well, a lot of it, certainly in this country, is down to the mandarins within Whitehall, the people, the faceless people that you never see, who are permanent. You can change the politicians every day of the week, but the mandarins stay there all the time. And then back in 2008, the telecoms division allowed through a company called Form, spelled P-H-O-R-M, which was the thin end of the wedge. And what they're allowed to do, companies like BT, Virgin Media, TalkTalk, there are three companies that use it, they target advertising. So you go on your web browser, whatever one it is, and then let's say you do a search for burglar alarms. And then you go on Facebook, and suddenly you'll see adverts popping up on your browser for burglar alarms. And it's down to this company called Form.
And that's all completely within the law.
It is. But that happened back in 2008. Now, whether the new GDPR rules, when they come in, whether someone will be brave enough to challenge that and say, I want you to remove my data under the GDPR, which they'll be allowed to do. I want you to cease using and processing my data.
So is the alternative, Steve, then, if you tick a box or whatever it is to say, you cannot use my data for advertising, Facebook then respond by saying, OK, that's absolutely fine, but we're going to charge you £5 a week for using Facebook. I mean, are they the choices effectively here?
Possibly, but the charge shouldn't be any more than they are making per person from these companies to access the data. So if Company A gets charged £50 per person per year to use that data, then that's all we should pay. We shouldn't pay any more than that.
Well, that'll be up to the free market to decide, I suppose, won't it?
Of course.
But I mean, Steve, you know, Neil from Mansfield's just texted in and said, the expert you had on earlier said people will be willing to pay £20 a month. I really don't think so, do you? What would you, Steve, be prepared to pay to use Facebook and the good bits, but to feel that you weren't going to be bombarded for burglar alarms or whatever else it was?
How long's a bit of string? But if they do go down that route, it won't be long before another company springs up offering something, another form of social media.
Yep.
Because social media is developing and changing all the time. Someone will come up and that'll be their tagline. We will not process your data.
Yeah, I think that will come at some point. You may well be right. But, Steve, your point's a good one, that we are where we are because politicians and the mandarins, as you called them, have allowed this to happen. Steve, I thank you very much indeed for your call. I'm going to do loads of Facebook messages tonight. I've simply got to, haven't I? Tina says, no to regulation. I will ditch it if it becomes another arm of the EU. Hazel says, I like Facebook because it's unregulated. People can speak their mind, or they used to be able to. That, Hazel, I think, is increasingly actually becoming the point, because this guy Zuckerberg in his early 30s has now become the arbiter for what is acceptable in political debate and what is not. And if he's not careful on that point, perhaps even bigger than the points about privacy, he could start to really, really lose people. Let's go to Leo from Croydon. Good evening, Leo.
Good evening, how are you?
I am well, Leo. I wonder, is Facebook a force for good or bad?
It's good. I'll be honest with you. It's good. I mean, there are some bad things that, yeah, your data is everywhere and you are exposed to a lot of things.
Yep.
However, I mean, I'm from Morocco and I can speak to my family from all over the world.
Yes.
And it just helps you. It helps you connect with them. And also, if I'm honest with you, there's a lot of news that if I'm on Facebook trying to speak to someone from my family, I can see news and stuff what's going on around the world. And it does help me keep up to date with things as well.
Yeah, I mean, Leo, look, I think it has been a force for good overall. Otherwise, 2 billion people wouldn't be signed up to it. I mean, it's a genius concept, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some people always try to find the bad in everything that's good. I mean, I'm not to say there isn't any bad in Facebook. I'm just trying to say that people are just trying to...
No, the concept, Leo, the concept's fantastic, and the idea that it's free, so lots of people sign up to it, and they, because of traffic, are able to get paid for advertising, something that Zuckerberg explained to an elderly senator who was really very confused by this model. I get all of that. Yeah. But there are issues about privacy, and I think some of the things that have come out over the course of the last month or two have really shocked quite a lot of people.
Me as well, me included. Some of the stuff I never expected. I was like, hold on a minute, is this what's really going on?
Well, that's right. So, Leo, do you think regulation's coming? Because I do.
It's difficult to... Yeah, and at the same time, no.
Well, I think they're going to regulate it. No. But, Leo, it's a great call, and thank you for it. Leo, a lot of people like Leo... They've used this, they can speak to their family all over the world, they think it's a great thing, but they've actually been a bit shocked at the extent to which your personal data is there, accessible, not directly, but indirectly to commercial companies all over the world. Mari says, you are using Facebook just now, so you must have faith in this media. Mari, I do have faith in it. I think it's brilliant in many ways. Absolutely brilliant. But I think there are some issues here about privacy. I think perhaps they have gone too far in what they're allowed to do, and I think some degree of sensible global regulation is coming. Paul says, Nigel, who will control it? Who is honest enough? Certainly not the politicians. Well, of course, Paul, that's always the problem, isn't it? You know, why is there only one Monopolies Commission was the question that Screaming Lord Such always used to ask. You know, who is going to be the authority that is the ultimate arbiter of what is and is not acceptable? I haven't got the answer for that. Lynn says, I take no notice of the Facebook ads anyway. I simply skip them when I can. Yeah, Lynn, fine, but the fact is, a lot of people do. And, you know, the money that's been spent on advertising on social media now dwarfs what's being spent through many other forms of media. Nathan is calling from Romford. Good evening, Nathan.
Hello, Nigel. Really glad to hear your voice.
Well, thank you. I'm very pleased to hear yours, Nathan. So come on, tell me, are you an avid Facebook user?
Absolutely. Well, not so much of a user. I am a small business owner, and I can tell you, without Facebook, I literally wouldn't be, you know, where I am. And not just me. And I've also actually bought things off Facebook before because of the ads that was sent to me. And, I mean, the question really is this. If you're using anything, would you rather see things that you're interested in or the things that you're not interested in?
Well, I think on balance, the things I'm interested in, Nathan, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what basically Facebook really is. It caters to what, you know, your interest. And I don't see what all the, you know, forces are about. Because at the end of the day, if you don't like the heat, get out of the kitchen. No one's forcing anyone to use social media. You don't have to use it, you know. And at the end of the day, many people, like the last caller, I think, or the last text says, they see ads, they skip it. It's not an issue.
Yeah.
You know, and when you're signing up to Facebook, there is a sort of clause there. You know, when you're taking that I accept. That, you know,
so Nathan, have you made, come on, be frank, have you made loads of money off the back of Facebook?
I wouldn't say loads. You know.
Oh, that sounds like you've done okay to me.
Yeah, no, not really. I'm not going to lie, you know, you just say I've made like millions and I haven't. But obviously, I know people have. And a lot of the courses, online e-commerce courses that I, you know, that have got me this far, a lot of people have, you know, they're making not just Facebook, you have Google ads and AdSense.
Yeah, but it's been good for you. Nathan, I thank you for that. And Nathan, someone there bringing in a commercial aspect there, small business owner, and it's been a benefit to him. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show exclusively on LBC. It's now 7:30 and time for the news with Thomas Watts.
Theresa May's cabinet has been meeting in Downing Street to discuss possible UK intervention in Syria. France says it has proof chemical weapons have been used by President Assad's regime. Moscow says it will not accept the findings of the international body called in to investigate the Salisbury nerve agent attack. The OPCW has backed Britain's position that Russian-designed Novichok was used against Sergei and Yulia Skripal. The child sexual abuse inquiries found authorities in Rochdale showed a total lack of urgency in tackling the sexual exploitation of boys. It also says opportunities were lost to prosecute the former Rochdale MP Cyril Smith while he was alive. LBC weather, showery rain pushing north and west across England tonight, drier in the southwest and in Wales, foggy in Scotland and Northern Ireland, a low of 5 degrees.
LBC Travel. In Southwark, it's very heavy on Blackfriars Bridge at the moment, northbound between Upper Ground to Victoria Embankment. The outside lane is blocked. That's because of an accident that happened on the bridge itself. In Charlton, it's queuing on Charlton Road, both ways on the approach to Hornfair Road. It is partially blocked here, again because of an accident. It is affecting a number of bus routes. And a warning if you are flying from either Luton or Stansted this evening, there are severe delays to flights in and out of the airports because of the weather, so do check before you travel. LBC Travel, I'm Louise Gookie.
This is LBC.
Come to the Galliard Seminars to learn how you can purchase a brand new apartment from under £150,000 with Help to Buy. Help to Buy is a government scheme that allows first-time buyers the right to purchase a home with just a 5% deposit. To learn how you can buy from under £150,000 with just a 5% deposit, join us from 5 p.m. on Friday the 20th of April until 5 p.m. on the 21st of April at the Crown Plaza Hotel Excel, Royal Victoria Dock, Western Gateway, London, E16 1AL, parking on site. For more information, call 0203 770 6300 or visit galliardhomes.com. That's galliardhomes.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Want to progress more in your career or run your own business?
With a business degree at GSM London, you can follow your bold dreams to success.
Degrees are awarded by the University of Plymouth, and at GSM London, you can start a degree without formal qualifications on our foundation year.
So why wait till October? Start a degree this June.
Search Have Bold Dreams at GSM London now.
GSM London. Have bold dreams.
Do you have a pension? Maybe you've got more than one. How do you know if they're in the right pension funds, making as much money as possible for your retirement? Answer is, you probably don't. At The Pension Works, our fully qualified independent financial advisors could add instant value to your retirement fund. Simply text the word YES to 83222 for your free Pension Works health check. That's YES to 83222 today. Your pensions working harder with The Pension Works.
This is the sound of someone with a million things to do waiting in. Your time is precious. We're with you. So our engineers call ahead to let you know when they're on their way. Search British Gas Home Care. 95% of engineers call ahead.
Spotted this week in Lidl. Treats from the Alps. There's a range of German sausages from $1.69. Viennese apple strudel just $1.79. And cans of Fest beer for only 99p. Cheers to that. Visit Lidl this week to see the full taste of the Alps range. Subject to availability, NI may vary. Selected stores while stocks last.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Before we get back to Mark Zuckerberg and whether he's impressed you and whether you think Facebook is a force for good and you're going to stick with it, or whether you're worried about the invasion as you see it of your privacy, before we get there, yesterday Donald Trump was very, very strong, was he not, with that first tweet of the day saying, missiles will be coming, smart missiles and lots of them. And I must say, I found myself, for one of the first times since he became president, I found myself in difficulty with this. I feel we should really learn from some of the errors we've made over the course of the last 15 years or so before we rush into military action without having a long-term, clear strategy of what we're really trying to do. And I was convinced, I think we were all convinced actually, that this attack was pretty much imminent. Well, today, Defence Secretary James Mattis has said this.
We're still assessing the intelligence ourselves and our allies. We're still working on this.
Is the U.S. military ready right now to conduct a retaliatory strike if ordered?
We stand ready to provide military options if they're appropriate.
So we're assessing, and if appropriate, we'll provide military options. Slightly different tone, I thought there. And then the Donald himself earlier on today said this.
We're having a number of meetings today. We'll see what happens. We're obviously looking at that very closely. We'll see what happens, folks. We'll see what happens. It's too bad that the world puts us in a position like that.
Well, I don't know. How do you read when Trump says we'll see what happens? Very difficult to read. I still do think they're going to act, but maybe not. Maybe they're going to delay. Maybe they're going to wait. I just don't know. But it's a very much a change of tone from what we had yesterday. Now, we do know that Trump often makes out their statements as part of a negotiation. We've seen it with the tariff wars. You know, I'm going to put tariffs on all of you, and then, oh, no, I'm going to let you off and let you off. China, no way. You know, that's kind of the way that Trump does stuff. I just don't know. But, of course, the other bit of speculation here is what will Theresa May do? Now, the Cabinet has met this afternoon. I've not seen any statements coming out of that whatsoever. One of the questions that's been asked on other LBC programmes and throughout the media is, you know, should Theresa May seek parliamentary approval before we get involved in anything? Well, whether she should or shouldn't, she doesn't actually need to, and it is worth thinking about this because deploying the armed forces is a prerogative power. It means the Prime Minister can do so without the backing of members of Parliament. So if there was a big missile strike over the course of the weekend, you know, she could commit us to it without going to Parliament. Some reports out tonight on American media that there are 8 major targets, including chemical weapons sites, military bases, etc. You know, quite frankly, in a situation like this, you believe what you want to believe. So is Facebook a force for good or bad? And Forbes says, oh, here we go. I didn't think it'd be long. Nigel is a hypocrite and a fraud. He was allied with Cambridge Analytica during the Brexit campaign. Cambridge Analytica, and we all throw our arms up in horror as if something dreadful has happened. Nobody, Forbes, nobody has told me that Cambridge Analytica have broken the law in any way at all. They might have contravened some of the guidelines within Facebook, but hey, if they harvested 50 million people's data during the Trump election campaign back in 2012, Obama's people harvested 200 million sets of data. So it looks like they've all been doing it. And actually, I've never done any business with Cambridge Analytica in my life. And I'm really sorry, Forbes, to disappoint you, but I've never done any business with them whatsoever. Let's go to James in Kensington. James, did Zuckerberg impress you?
No, not really. I thought he looked very uncomfortable all the time, and I thought he was so over-rehearsed. He'd obviously been taught exactly what to say by $1,000 a day, US lawyers. So not really, but it was very interesting.
So $1,000? I bet you. I tell you what, James. I'll bet you that Zuckerberg's lawyers earn $1,000 an hour, not $1,000 a day.
Actually, that's what I meant to say. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And just share with the listeners that may not have seen. Share with them the seat that he was sitting on. Did you see it?
The seat he was sitting on? Yes, it was propped up to make him look taller. A little sad, I thought, actually. Yes.
It was like a little kiddie's booster seat that you put in the back of the car, wasn't it?
Exactly. But what I wanted to say was Senator Ted Cruz was grilling Zuckerberg about the right-leaning user accounts that have been banned. So I think one was Diamond and Salt or something like that.
So Diamond and Silk. Okay, now most. I haven't mentioned them. I haven't mentioned them this week because I don't think most of our listeners will know. But as you have, I will. Diamond and Silk are two black women. They are very humorous, bags of fun. And they are Trump supporters. They've got a big Facebook following, and it's through that they broadcast their thoughts and their views, and they get feedback and a whole load of traffic, which is good for them, and it's good for Facebook too, of course, because it's lots and lots and lots, of posts and traffic. And they are Trump supporters, but in no way would I think Diamond and Silk extreme. I had breakfast with them in Washington a few months ago. I could barely stop laughing. I mean, they are huge, huge fun. And as they say, we're black women who just happen to support Trump. And Facebook basically had put the blocks on them. And this happened about a week ago. Senator Ted Cruz raised the issue. And indeed, another congresswoman actually raised the issue. And now Zuckerberg has said, sorry, we made a mistake on that one. They've now got full access to the service. But it does, James, take us back to the call we had before the break, that at the moment, on these vast social media sites, people like Zuckerberg and his close acolytes have enormous power over where the entire political debate goes.
Exactly. I mean, his explanation for all these right-wing accounts being banned, and there have been, largely right-wing accounts, and in fact, Ted Cruz asked him if he knew of any left-wing accounts, and he couldn't come up with any. And his explanation was that he admitted that Silicon Valley is extremely left-leaning, is what he said, extremely left-leaning. Yeah. And the issue is that whoever writes the algorithms, whoever sets the moderation policies, whoever recruits the moderators, and there are 20,000 of them, I think that he said, they're all likely to have left agendas. And that's what we've seen and what I've seen personally, and I think it's actually very scary. And I'm not for regulation in general. I'm very against regulation. But if we are going to have regulation, what we need is transparency. We need to know what are the moderation policies, what are the...
James, Trump's engagement is down 45% at a time when there are massive global news stories that he's in the middle of. That says to you something fundamentally has changed, and they have become very much more leftward leaning in terms of their, I'm going to say bias, but the way the algorithms, I mean, don't ask me. You need a sort of master's in mathematics to even understand the beginnings of this, let alone how it really works. But James, ultimately, we've got a choice here, haven't we? Do we want political content to be approved or censored or deemed potentially terrorist? Diamond and Silk were called dangerous, which was laughable. Do we want that done by somebody based in Silicon Valley, or do we think that at some level a national or global regulator might better make those decisions? Because, James, that's the choice we're going to have, I think.
Well, I think what we need eventually is something like the equivalent of Ofcom, but I think it should be a very, very light regulation, because people have the opportunity to block and mute messages, and that's what they should do. If it's incitement to violence, then that's something that needs to be stopped. But apart from that, I think it should be very, very light regulation in the future.
Yeah, OK. James, thank you very much indeed for your call. I'm going to go to Maidstone in Kent and speak to Ian. Good evening, Ian.
Good evening, Nigel.
So does Facebook have a bright future in your view?
I think Facebook has some challenges, and the challenges that they face is with their business model relative to the demographic that uses Facebook. Put it simply, they have too many people like me on there, and too few people like my son, and that's one of the problems that they face.
Yes, the joke amongst youngsters is that Facebook's for old people, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And look, I'm a heavy user of Facebook. I work in a business that very much uses social media from a marketing perspective.
Yep.
And I use Facebook, in the way that many people do. I keep in touch with friends. I use it for speaking my mind. And actually, I'm probably maybe a bit different to some of my demographic or generation, in that I'm quite happy for my data to be shared, because but you got to realise that ultimately, if it's free, you're the product.
Yeah.
And therefore you've got to accept that.
Do you think, Ian? Do you think that a paid-for model, either on this or a similar platform, could emerge that actually does protect you from being bombarded by businesses like yours that want to sell us products?
Well, the challenge, I'm not going to answer that with a yes/no question just yet, because my answer to that would be, if Facebook are trying to attract more young people, then the subscription model will not do that. And the reason being, and it's been proven, that the millennial generation and younger are actually very happy to share their data as long as they feel they're getting something back in return that's meaningful to them.
Yeah.
So actually, if Facebook wants to reduce its age demographic, they have to keep the free model. The older demographic is cynical about the use of data. And so therefore therein lies the challenge for Facebook.
Yep.
I don't have an answer for them,
but
that's the challenge.
No, but you've laid the challenge out well. Ian, I thank you. Now, you may well be listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, or you could be watching it on Facebook. Facebook, we love you, really. We really do. Oh, it's 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
Theresa May has been holding a cabinet meeting to weigh up military strikes against Syria. Would it be right to go ahead without full support from MPs and the public?
Clive Bull on LBC.
AI gets a lot of bad rap. In reality, AI is cutting wastage, it's saving lives, it's helping us understand really complex problems. One of my favourite predictions was with a client of ours, GSK, where they needed to predict cold and flu outbreaks 5 days before they happen. We won an award with Google for producing a model which allowed us to predict at the town level 5 days before cold and flu had hit that it was going to hit. This was made by looking at 5 years of data of cold and flu products and prescriptions, but also weather variations, people on Twitter saying, oh, I've got a bit of a sneeze or I'm not going to work today. All those things combined allow us to be incredibly accurate about when influenza will hit. They then kindly let us use that model for the NHS. That model is very useful for accident and emergency. So it always amazes me how this model can be useful for one thing but then used for another, and that's one of the great things about our job.
Yahoo Finance. Business stories that matter.
I'll swap you a Brazilian striker for a German centre-back.
Throw in a Spanish keeper, and you, sir, have a deal.
Result!
Need a Panini World Cup sticker pack? Then get yourself down to the Co-op, where they're just 80p. Participating stores only, subject to availability.
Yopa, yeah. Woo. Are you stuck in a sensual 90s R&B smooth groove? No? Fantastic. Then why not use Yopa to sell your home? You get your own dedicated local estate agent.
With a dedicated local agent.
That's right, and with Yopa's no sale, no fee plan, you don't have to pay a penny until your house is sold.
Don't pay that penny, no.
Thanks. Book a free home valuation at yopa.co.uk. Yopa, seriously, why not? I literally have just told you. Terms apply.
It's in my hair, my eyebrows, it's even up my nose. They make painting look easy on the telly, but let me tell you, it's not. The wall looks like it's been finger painted by a giant child. Who's going to rescue this? Oh, relax. It's Trust a Trader. Actual professionals who know what they're doing and don't leave the place looking like, well, my face. Now I can concentrate on the important stuff. Whispering peach or dirty mayonnaise. Visit trustatrader.com.
Want to progress more in your career or run your own business?
With a business degree at GSM London, you can follow your bold dreams to success.
Degrees are awarded by the University of Plymouth, and at GSM London, you can start a degree without formal qualifications on our foundation year.
So why wait till October? Start a degree this June.
Search Have Bold Dreams at GSM London now.
GSM London. Have bold dreams.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Did Mark Zuckerberg impress you? Do you think Facebook is now in a good place? I played you earlier in the show his big apology and his big pitch for what Facebook was and what it is. Let's just listen to a little piece when he was in some trouble.
Mr. Zuckerberg, would you be comfortable sharing with us the name of the hotel you stayed in last night?
Epic.
No.
If you've messaged anybody this week, would you share with us the names of the people you've messaged?
Senator, no, I would probably not choose to do that publicly here.
I think that may be what this is all about. You're right.
There we are, folks. Wasn't that really very, very interesting? Dick Durbin, the senator from Illinois, that asked those questions, and you could see Zuckerberg was in a hell of a mess over it. And really what people are saying is, look, the idea that it's a social media site and people can get together and it creates traffic and gives you advertising, and hey, that's great. But maybe some of this stuff has gone just a little bit too far in terms of the potential invasion of people's privacy. Some people don't care, some do. Helen on Twitter says, I'm afraid the robot named Zuckerberg provided me with more fear than before. And that is how some people are feeling. Overall, I do not think, because of what's happened in the last month or two, that many people will drop Facebook. That is my view. I could be wrong. Maybe Rudy from Exeter is going to tell me that. Good evening.
Yeah, hi, Nigel. There's a few points I think that should be noted, really. The one is that I always feel that he's trying to dodge the question and not answer it. And then when he doesn't want to answer it, to get out of it, he says, can I follow that up? He's got a lot of things he's going to be following up.
Well, I tell you what, Rudy, many inquiries operate a bit like that. But did you find him insincere?
Oh, 100%. He's lying through his back teeth. And the second thing is this, right?
That's quite strong language, Rudy. I mean, he's lying. So what is he covering up the way in which they operate? What's he doing that's not true?
Of course, because when he answers the question, he then says, oh, well, I don't really understand what you mean. A CEO of a big corporation like that deals with people every day at high levels, and then he says, a basic question. I don't understand what you mean, and I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer. So
right.
He understands it. And the second thing is, he then gives this flannel that people can control what people see and what they do. No, they can't, because if you go onto your Facebook profile and you set everything to private, you cannot, deactivate where friends of friends can see your profile.
Yes.
I only want friends just to see my profile. I don't want friends of friends to see my profile, and so it's not in control. You can't control turning the adverts off. So again, you're not in control.
So in response, Rudy, to this, just sorry to stop you there, but time running away and lots of people want to speak on this.
I understand.
But in response to that, Rudy, he said, well, maybe a degree of regulation is needed. We will regulate ourselves. Do you trust Mark Zuckerberg and people like that to regulate themselves?
No, you can't trust anyone to regulate themselves. It needs to be done independently because you know yourself, in a company, you need 3 people minimum as directors because then 2 can outvote the other.
Okay.
Complete control. Now, the last thing I was going to say is, right, and this will be the end of it, right, is the fact that he's made millions by selling this data. So all these people he's told that...
selling access to the data, let's just be clear about that.
Yeah, so he should be paying compensation to those people that were violated of that. Hit him in the pocket where it hurt.
Well, let's see. So, Rudy, stay with me. Let's listen to a bit of Mark Zuckerberg passing off the blame and responsibility.
My team follow up with you after this. I'm happy to have my team follow up with you on more information if that would be helpful. Senator, I have not heard that. Mr. Chairman, I will have my team follow up with you on what information. Senator, I don't know. I do not know. We can follow up.
Okay, do that.
I can certainly have my team get back to you on any specifics there that I don't know sitting here today.
Rudy, I tell you what, you were right, weren't you?
Of course I'm right. I mean, and if I can see it...
Yep. Yeah, no, listen, you illustrated it beautifully, and Mr. Zuckerberg did it even better. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Ribardia says on Facebook, Facebook started out with good intentions, but it's been turned into a political weapon. Lynn says Facebook is about showing off. Look at me, where I've been. It's full of trout pouts and encourages narcissism. Danny says, I don't care where my information goes, as long as it doesn't interfere in my life. Danny, fine, but the point is, if suddenly you get bombarded day and night with adverts because you've Googled something or whatever it is, maybe then it does begin to interfere with your life. And by the way, folks, I'm not making the argument, you know, that Facebook's a bad thing. It's been much more of a force for good than bad. Of that, I've got little doubt. But it's got some problems right now. Leon is calling from Hastings. Good evening, Leon.
Yes, hello, how are you?
I'm very well. Were you impressed by Mr. Zuckerberg?
No, not at all, because I have a personal story regarding Facebook as well, which is very relevant to what he was saying about people need to be careful of their own information.
Go on, then.
I mean, it completely does not surprise me that they've been mining our information. I mean, for years, people have been told on the internet to be careful of their information. Yet, I mean, one of your callers previously was going on about millennials not caring about sharing in their information, and older people are. But the point is, you know, you have to be careful of your own information. You should not be putting all this stuff out there. Now, my personal story is that I had a Facebook page for years and years, and it nurtured it, had a nice load of friends on it abroad that I kept in contact with, but I never got personal on it. I just used to keep in contact with people and talk about issues rather than personal things, you know?
Okay.
Facebook obviously picked up on the fact that I was not using it personally, and I wasn't using my actual name either, because I would never use my actual name on such a public medium. Anyway, I suddenly found that my account was deleted after years of using it. All my friends had disappeared. Everything I'd ever said had disappeared. And I had this email saying, your account is not authentic. Prove who you are. Send us details of who you are, your phone number, blah, blah, blah. I looked at this in horror. I thought, how dare these people invade my privacy like this? I got in touch with all kinds of people. One of the things you should note as well is that when you make an agreement with Facebook, it says you own your information.
Yep.
They deleted my information without asking me or getting my permission.
Leon, can I ask, in terms of your view of the world, are you someone that's sort of a fair bit to the right of centre?
I am, yes.
Yeah, funny that. Leon, there are a lot of people saying what you've just said to me. A lot of people. Now, the question is, you know, are your right of centre views acceptable, or are they now deemed to be unacceptable? Leon, very interesting story. Thank you. Karen says, never put anything on Facebook that you don't mind the whole world knowing about, including the fact, Karen, that you've just done it on Facebook. Cockney says, never had any faith in Facebook, so nothing's changed. And yet, Cockney, you're messaging me on Facebook. Hey, you couldn't invent some of this stuff, could you? My last caller of the evening is going to be Daniel, who's calling from Hyde Park. Good evening, Daniel.
Hey, good evening, Nigel.
So, Zuckerberg was there, and by the way, we're not going to get the benefit of Zuckerberg because he's been invited to come to the British Parliament, he's refused. He's been invited to come to the European Parliament, he's refused. So, kind of, I think that was it, Daniel, really.
No, I think he has refused, and that's his right to do so. He is sending 2 senior employees of the company, from what I've read, and hopefully they'll be able to answer the questions that are going to be proposed to them. I think just where he's concerned, I'd actually speak in his defence.
You better speak into the microphone, Daniel.
Sorry?
Speak into the microphone.
Sorry, I'd say the reality is that if you share something online, that's you're doing so out of free will. You're not being coerced. We all upload as we choose to do so, and I actually think the bigger problem that what social media has caused is not where data is being sent, because every company under the sun nowadays is using data in some form or another. It is actually the depression and the more individual instances of self-promotion and not feeling like your pictures are being liked, which is what social media is toxic for, in my opinion.
Okay, so what's to be done?
In truth, I think that regulation might go some way to helping data leaks, and perhaps that will help. But actually, I think people need to be told that this is only the internet; it's not the real world. And just because you're not uploading a photo every minute of the day doesn't mean you're forgotten. And don't forget about the fact that you can pick the phone up to people and see them in real life, and you don't have to pretend to be someone online that you're not in the real world.
Daniel, we'll finish on that note. Meeting people in real life. I rather like that. But there is one last Facebook message. Jen says, #Stop Zuckerberg. Adjust your permissions on your phone and turn off your location. We didn't even get around to discussing location, but hey, this debate is not finished by a long way. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show. I'm back here on Sunday morning and live on Facebook at 10 o'clock.